My name is Noah Winslow. I used to think Christmas was my favorite day of the year. I told myself it was because I loved seeing other people happy, watching my siblings tear into gifts, hearing my mom hum along to old records, smelling cinnamon rolls in the oven before sunrise. But looking back now, I think I just liked feeling needed. Like maybe if I gave enough, they'd remember I existed. I'm 29 years old, the oldest of three, quiet, predictable, low maintenance. My mom used to say with a chuckle, like it was a compliment. Like being easy to ignore was a virtue. Growing up in the Winslow house meant learning to shrink. My brother Evan was the athlete, always commanding the spotlight. My sister Holly, the baby, was radiant. Cheerleader, honor roll, center of every family photo. Me. I was the background. The one holding the camera. The one who never needed anything. And somewhere along the way I started believing them. By the time I was in college, I'd already become the family fixer. When Dad left, it was me who picked up Mom's overdue credit card payments. When Avon crashed his truck on icy roads, I drained half my scholarship fund to help cover repairs. Holly's tuition, a private school she just had to attend. I co-signed the loan without telling anyone how much interest it would add to my own. They never asked how I was doing. They assumed I was okay. Because Noah never made a fuss. So last December, I did something I'd never done before. I planned something for me. I started early, before Halloween. I wrote notes to each family member, real ones. Honest, thoughtful things I'd never said out loud. I printed photos. I tucked checks into envelopes, just enough to ease their burdens. Hallie could cover rent. Mom could fix her broken washer. Even could finally take that course he kept talking about, but never signed up for. I wasn't trying to buy their love. I just wanted to be seen. By the time Christmas Eve rolled around, I had everything packed in a leather satchel. The envelopes wrapped in gold twine. Each card sealed with red wax and their initials. I even baked cookies. I told myself not to expect anything in return, but that hope, that soft, stupid hope, still came with me as I drove through the snow to our childhood home in Bramble Hollow. It was quiet when I arrived. The kind of stillness that makes your breath feel louder than it should. I parked by the old pine tree Dad had planted the year I was born and stepped inside with cold fingers and a warmer heart. The house smelled like nutmeg and pine and laughter. Laughter that didn't pause when I walked in. The living room was glowing. Warm yellow light from the fireplace flickered across polished ornaments and shiny wrapping paper. Evan's booming laugh echoed from the couch, where he was showing off his new smartwatch. Hallie was curled near the tree, unboxing what looked suspiciously like a brand new iPad. "Look what Mom got me," she squealed, holding it up like a game show prize. I paused in the doorway. No one looked up, not even Mom. She was perched on the edge of her recliner, sipping wine from a glass etched with "World's Best Mom," cheeks flushed with pride. "Do you like it?" "Sweetheart," she asked Hallie. "It's perfect," Hallie said, even chimed in from across the room. "Beats last year's Amazon knockoff." They laughed. The moment lingered too long. I cleared my throat softly. Mom blinked, then stood a little too quickly. "No, honey, I didn't see you there." She walked over and gave me a quick hug, more of a tap on the shoulder. "Let me grab your gift," she said, already turning away. I placed my satchel carefully by the coffee table and took a seat. My hands were still cold. She returned with a small paper bag. The handles were wrinkled. One corner was torn. No tissue paper, no ribbon. Just a crumpled CVS receipt peeking from the side. "I saw this and thought of you," she said. I reached in and pulled out a white ceramic mug. It had a chip near the rim. Familiar. Too familiar. My eyes narrowed. I turned the mug slowly and saw the faint green smudge I remembered, match I'd made her last winter, the day after I brought over that exact mug as a surprise gift. "You gave this to me last year," I said quietly. She laughed not unkindly. "Well, you always say you don't need anything." Even chuckled. Classic Noah. Low maintenance. Hallie added, "Besides, you're the one always saying it's the thought that counts, right?" The room rippled with polite laughter. I smiled, small, tight. My throat burned with something I didn't have a name for. Not anger, not yet. Just confirmation. I looked down at the mug. Still faintly stained. They hadn't even washed it. You're invisible because it's easier for them that way. The thought came uninvited, sharp. Final. I reached down, opened my satchel, and pulled out the stack of envelopes. Crisp, carefully sealed, names scrawled in ink. I'd tested for hours until it dried just right. What's that? Hallie asked, perking up. I didn't answer. I stared at each of them, their faces so full of joy, so certain in their positions. The golden ones. The favorites. The recipients. I slid the envelopes back in, zipped the bag, and stood up. No, Mom asked, confused. Aren't you staying for dinner? I adjusted my coat collar. Not this year. Evan frowned. Dude, what's going on? I turned toward the door. Nothing, I said. Just realized something. The door clicked shut behind me, muffling the holiday chaos inside. The night air bit into my cheeks as I stepped onto the porch. Snow crunched beneath my boots, soft and slow. The whole neighborhood looked like something from a Christmas card. Icicles dripping from rooftops, fairy lights blinking silently, the world wrapped in frost. I walked to the edge of the driveway, bag over my shoulder, still clutching that chipped mug like a symbol. Behind me, I heard the door creak again. Noah. Wait, it was Holly. I didn't stop. She caught up, her breath clouding in front of her. You're being weird. I paused, not because of her voice, but because this moment, this exact scene, had played out 100 times before. Me walking away, someone following. Them confused, me quiet. Nothing ever changed. What is it this time? She asked, her tone already shifting into that old sarcastic lilt. You mad because you didn't get an iPad? I turned slowly. The porch light cast a halo over her, but her eyes were impatient. I brought gifts too, I said quietly. Her gaze flicked to the satchel. Money, right? That's what you do. Not this year. Her brow furrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I looked past her, through the window, where I saw Mom laughing at something Evan said. They didn't even notice I left, I murmured. Hallie crossed her arms. You're overreacting. I met her eyes. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just reacting finally. She shifted, uncomfortable. You always act like the martyr Noah, like no one ever appreciates you. But you never say anything either. How are we supposed to know what you want? That stopped me. Because she wasn't wrong. But it also didn't make her right. I exhaled. You know what I wanted, Hallie? I wanted to feel like someone saw me, not what I do. Me. Her voice was quieter now. You really think we don't? I held up the mug. This was your idea of a gift. Silence fell between us. I lowered the mug. This isn't about presents, or even money. It's about always being the backup, the afterthought, the default lias. I didn't know it felt like that, she said. No one ever asked. I turned and started walking again. She didn't follow this time. Not right away. The drive was quiet. Just the hum of tires over slush, and the rhythmic swish of wipers clearing snow from the windshield. No music. No calls. Just me and the muffled echoes of things I didn't say. I didn't even head home. Not the apartment I was overpaying for. Not the place where the silence had always felt borrowed. Instead, I drove north, to the cabin. I'd been renting it in secret since September. Furnishing it slowly. A plan that didn't have a name yet. Just a feeling one day I might need this. Tonight was that day. When I arrived, the snow was heavier. Clinging to the roof like a thick blanket, I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and let out a long breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The space was modest, one room. Fireplace, tiny kitchen, stack of books in the corner. But it felt safe. Mine. I dropped the bag onto the worn armchair and stood for a long moment, listening to the stillness. No footsteps, no demands of disappointment. Then I unpacked the envelopes, 9 of them, red ribbon, gold ink. Names of people who never expected anything. People who often needed everything. The envelopes weren't labeled Mom or Evan or Hallie. I had scratched those out in the car with quiet, final strokes. Now they raid Women's Shelter Maple Street, Youth Tech Program East Side, Food Pantry St. David's, Library Laptop Fund, Community Center Volunteer Drive, Veterans Housing Emergency School Music Program, Grant High New Start Addiction Recovery Emergency Fund, Anonymous. I didn't even feel angry anymore. Just done. I boiled water, made tea, and stood by the fire as it hissed to life. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing the cabin walls like a memory trying to get in. My phone vibrated. A string of missed calls. And then a text from Holly. "Hallie, I found the list in your old notebook. The stuff you paid for. I didn't know about most of it. I just didn't know." I stared at the screen. Not because I didn't believe her, but because part of me didn't know what to do with honesty now that it was arriving too late. I didn't reply. I closed my eyes and let the fire warm my face. The envelopes were still on the table, glowing softly in the light. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to prove anything by giving them away. I just wanted them to matter. The next morning, I woke up early. No alarm. Just the natural light stretching through the frost, laced windows and the soft whisper of snow sliding off the roof. I brewed strong black coffee, wrapped myself in an old flannel coat, and looked at the 9 red envelopes resting on the coffee table. Today, they'd leave with me. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Didn't draft a speech. Didn't take selfies. No grand gestures for Instagram stories or pity clicks from people who once called me selfish for saying no. I was just a man in an old coat, dropping off hope in places that needed it. First stop, the women's shelter. A squat brick building near the freeway, half covered in vines that had long since died in the cold. I slipped the envelope through the slot by the door. As I turned, a woman sweeping the front step looked up. She smiled. Not the polite, forced kind, one of those small, genuine smiles you can feel in your chest. "Merry Christmas," she said. I blinked. Yeah, Merry Christmas. It took me a second to realize no one had said that to me yesterday. Not even once. I hit the rest of my stops in quiet rhythm. Food pantry, youth program, the local library, where I slipped 2 laptops worth of cash into an envelope labeled Future Coders. No one chased me. No one cried. No one demanded to know how much. It was the calmest Christmas morning I'd had in over a decade. On the way back to the cabin, I stopped at a gas station. Bought myself a peppermint hot chocolate and a gas station pastry that tasted exactly like childhood, too sweet, too warm, too needed. Back inside the cabin, I lit the fireplace again and sat cross-legged in front of it with my drink and a book I hadn't touched in months. That's when my phone lit up. Not with another plea from Hallie. Not with Mom's disappointment. It was a message from the director of the Youth Tech Program. "Director Malik, your gift just paid for 6 laptops. 6 kids who didn't have one yesterday will build their futures on them starting Monday. We don't know who you are, but thank you." I stared at it, let it sink in. No guilt, no manipulation, just impact, just truth. I typed a reply, then deleted it. I didn't need thanks. I didn't need to be seen by the people who'd ignored me. I just needed to keep doing this. For me. That evening, I made dinner from scratch. Nothing fancy. Just roasted vegetables and warm bread. I ate it in silence, not lonely, just alone. A kind of aloneness that felt like agency instead of abandonment. Later that night, as the fire dimmed to embers, I scrolled through my old texts. My finger paused on a group chat labeled, "The Family, a Lil." Unread messages stacked like bricks. I archived the thread without opening a single one. Then I put my phone on airplane mode, placed it face down, and climbed into bed. Warm, light, unburdened. Tomorrow, I would start a new chapter. But tonight, I was no one's ATM, just Aiden. And for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. It took 3 days for the phone to start ringing again. Different tone this time. Not panic, not guilt, not even confrontation, just silence, missed calls from Mom, Luke, Aunt Janine. One from an unknown number I suspected was Clara using someone else's phone. I didn't pick up. I wasn't punishing anyone. I just didn't feel like handing out free explanations to people who hadn't earned them. Instead, I turned towards something else. Something I hadn't done in years. I started coding again, not for work, not for a paycheck, for me. That first afternoon, I cracked open my laptop and revisited an old passion project. A simple app I designed 5 years ago to help low-income students find refurbished laptops and free software licenses. I had abandoned it after my second round of bailing out Luke's business idea. Now, I resurrected it, line by line. No distractions. No guilt texting me in all caps. I reached out to Malik at the youth mentorship program. We scheduled a call. "You serious about building something for them?" he asked. "Serious enough to build it for free," I said. He laughed. "That's either charity or revenge. Maybe both." He didn't press. He just said, "Okay, let's build it." That weekend, I met my first mentee. His name was Bryson, 16, smart, eyes full of questions. The kind of kid who flinches every time he opens his mouth, like he expects someone to shut him down. I recognized the posture immediately. I'd seen it in my own reflection for years. We talked for an hour. He didn't ask about my family. He asked about the app. And for the first time in a long time, I spoke without filtering for judgment, without wondering who might twist my words into guilt or obligation. It felt like breathing again after years of shallow gasps. The next day, I received an email from the women's shelter. They'd used the envelope to replace a broken boiler. The heat came on that morning. The children stopped shivering. No one asked for my name. No one asked for more. Just a short line in the email. "You did something good today." I read it 3 times. Saved it to a folder titled Reminders. That week, I made a rule. No contact unless it was sincere. No contact unless it came with more than a request. And silence. Silence would be treated not as absence, but space. A space I would now use to build my own life. By midweek, I realized something wild. I didn't miss them. Not really. I missed the version of them I had made up in my head. The imaginary family who saw me, thanked me, checked in on me, not because they needed anything, but because they wanted to. That family had never existed. The real version. They were somewhere, scrambling to replace the old safety net I used to be. But me, I was here, in a quiet cabin, writing code, brewing tea, guiding a kid through Python logic while snow fell gently outside. I wasn't thriving yet, but I was awake, and I was free. The email came on a Tuesday night. I almost deleted it. The subject line was vague, "just a minute." I clicked it anyway. It was from Dad. I blinked at the screen. My father wasn't a tech guy. He still printed directions off Google Maps. The message was short. "Aiden, I know I haven't earned your time, but I'd like to give you mine. If you ever want to talk, I'll be at Eddie's Cafe every Thursday at 7 a.m. No pressure, no guilt, just coffee." Dad, that was it. No excuses. No begging, just a seat offered, not demanded. And I didn't know what to do with that. Because growing up, Dad was always the background figure. Not cruel, not warm. Just there, like the old recliner in the corner of the living room. Reliable, silent, faded. I remember being 9, asking for help with a school project. He'd looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. I stopped asking after that. So seeing this message now, written like an invitation rather than an obligation, rattled something loose in my chest. I didn't reply. Didn't show up that Thursday, or the one after. But on the 3rd Thursday, I found myself driving past Eddie's Cafe at exactly 6:59 a.m. The lights were on, the windows fogged from the morning chill. Inside, I saw a man sitting alone at a corner booth. Gray coat, paper cup in his hand, elbows on the table, watching the door, not checking his phone, not fidgeting, just waiting. And suddenly, I wasn't angry anymore. I was curious, so I parked. Walked in. He looked up when the bell above the door jingled. No surprise in his face. Just a quiet nod. "Morning." I sat down across from him. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We ordered coffee. Black for him, cream for me. Took him 15 minutes to speak again. "When your mom and I split," he said, "I told myself you'd be okay. You always seemed okay." I didn't respond. He looked down. I think I used that as an excuse to disappear. Still, I didn't speak. He met my eyes again. But watching you walk out of that house on Christmas, I realized you were never okay. You were just quiet. I finally took a breath. There's a difference. A big one, he said. One we never bothered to learn. He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. Plain. No ribbon. No name in gold ink. I sold the boat, he said. The one I never took you out on. I blinked. This is half, he said, sliding it toward me. The other half I'm using to pay off your mom's loan. Not because she asked. Because it's time someone else stepped up. I didn't touch the envelope. I'm not trying to make things right, he added, just trying to be less wrong. And that was it. We finished our coffee. He walked out first. And for the first time in my life, my father gave me space without walking away. 3 weeks passed. The snow had melted into gray slush. The cabin was quiet, and I was starting to believe maybe the silence would last, until the knock came. 3 soft taps, then nothing. I opened the door. Clara stood there. No makeup, puffy coat, hair in a loose braid. She looked smaller than I remembered, like life had wrung something out of her. Hey, she said. I didn't say anything. She shifted on her feet. I tried texting. I saw. She nodded. Can I come in? I didn't move. Not right away. Then I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, like the floor might collapse. Her eyes scanned the space. Fireplace, bookshelves, the chipped mug on the table. You kept that? She asked, pointing to the mug. I did, I said. Not as a souvenir. She winced. I deserved that. Clara sat on the edge of the couch, like she didn't believe she was welcome to sink into it. I didn't come to ask for anything, she said. That would be a first. She flinched again. But then, to her credit, she stayed. Look, I messed up. We all did. But I think I was the worst because I knew. I knew how much you gave. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. I told myself you didn't care. She continued. Because it was easier than admitting I was using you. We made you the family fixer. And then we resented you for it. That's convenient, I said. She nodded. Yeah, it was. Silence stretched between us. Finally, she looked up. Her voice broke. Aiden, I don't miss the money. I miss my brother. I swallowed something tight in my throat. You mean the brother you forgot on birthdays? Or the one who was good enough to wire tuition, but not get a seat at the graduation dinner? Tears welled in her eyes. Both. I was blind. I see it now. Only after I left. Yeah, she whispered. But I'm still here, trying. I looked away. Out the window. The trees swayed quietly. What do you want, Clara? She stood. Pulled a small envelope from her bag. I got my first real job, she said. Full-time. Benefits, it's not much. But she placed the envelope on the table. I wanted to repay what I could. I stared at it. Didn't touch it. I can't undo everything, she said, voice shaking. But I'm trying to rebuild. On my own this time. She moved toward the door. Stopped. Then turned. If you ever want a sister again, I'll be waiting. But not depending. She left. The cabin filled with silence once more. But for the first time, it didn't feel like a wall. It felt like a door, left gently open. The envelope sat untouched on my table for days. Some mornings I'd walk past it and feel anger. Other mornings, it made me ache, like a scar that still twinged when it rained. I didn't open it. Not because I didn't care, but because I wasn't sure yet if I wanted to measure love in dollars ever again. Instead, I focused on the life I was building. Quiet days filled with purpose, not panic. Volunteering, reading, teaching Bryson how to debug his first app. And then came the email. Subject line, Hi Aiden. It's Dad. I stared at it for almost a full minute. My father rarely spoke more than a dozen words at family gatherings, usually muttered over mashed potatoes. He was a figure of smoke, always working, always distant. Until the bills came due. Then he had opinions. I clicked. Aiden, I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want to say I admire what you're doing. I know I haven't said much over the years, but I've been watching. maybe too quietly. When I saw what you did this Christmas, I realized how far behind I was, not just financially, but emotionally. You're not the backup plan. You were the foundation, and we all stood on you too long. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. No expectations. Dad, I didn't know what to do with that. It wasn't a grand apology. It wasn't polished. But it was real. And somehow that was harder to process than all the guilt-ridden voicemails and dramatic texts combined. That night, I sat by the fire again. The same chipped mug in my hand. The envelope still on the table. My father's words echoing quietly in the space between walls I had built and walls I was starting to dismantle. And I thought about what it means to forgive, not for them, but for me. To set down the weight, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. The next morning, I brewed coffee, wrapped myself in an old flannel blanket, and finally opened the envelope. Inside wasn't money. It was a photo. May, maybe 10 years old, holding a crook snowman I'd built, cheeks red from the cold, grinning at the camera like the world had never let me down. Behind me, my dad stood with a shovel in one hand, his other resting gently on my shoulder. Scrawled on the back in his handwriting, I don't say it often, but I always saw you. Proud of you, even then. I pressed the photo against my chest and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. It didn't fix everything, but it cracked something open. That night, I wrote an email back. Dad, thanks for the picture. I remember that day. You told me not to give up on the arms falling off. We rebuilt them twice. I didn't think you noticed that kind of stuff. Maybe I stopped hoping you did. I'm not ready to come home, but I'm open to talking. Maybe a phone call next week. No expectations, just conversation. Aiden, I hovered over the send button, heart pounding. Then clicked. For the first time, I wasn't offering help. I was offering a boundary, a voice. And for the first time, I wanted to be heard not as the family's fixer, but as Aiden. Just Aiden. That night, I didn't dream of debt or guilt or rejected mugs. I dreamed of a version of me that stood tall, quiet still, but no longer invisible. A week later, the call came. I was out in the back behind the cabin, shoveling snow from the porch stairs, when my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I almost let it ring out of habit, then remembered the email I'd sent. Dad, I picked up, breath visible in the air. Hey, I said. There was a pause. Then his voice, low, a little gravelly, like it hadn't been used in a while. Hey, Aiden. Neither of us said anything for a moment. Then he cleared his throat. I didn't think you'd reply. I wasn't sure I would. He chuckled lightly. That tracks. Another pause. Then he said, You got your own place, huh? Out in the woods like your old man used to dream? I guess I did. You like the quiet? More than I thought I would. He let out a breath. Good. That's good. The silence stretched again, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. Just cautious. Finally, he said, You were right, you know. About everything, the money, the calls, your mom and the others. I didn't respond. I should have stepped in, he said. I saw it happening. I just let it go. Kept my head down like always. I looked out over the frozen trees. You were surviving too. Doesn't excuse it. No, I said. He let that sit. Then he said, I miss you, son. Not just for what you did for everyone. I miss you. Just you. My throat tightened. I don't know if I believe that yet. I said honestly. That's fair, he said. But I'll be here if and when you're ready. No asking for anything. Just want to know you again. And for the first time I heard it. Not expectation. Not panic. Just regret. And maybe hope. After that call with Dad, something strange settled in me. Not quite peace, but not bitterness either. Like maybe a part of me that had been clenched for years was finally relaxing its grip. That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind had picked up again, whistling through the trees. I sat by the fireplace, staring at the dying embers, the memory of Dad's voice still echoing in my ears. He said he missed me. Not the provider, not the problem solver, just me. And I realized I didn't even know who that was anymore. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the shed. It was an old structure behind the cabin, mostly used for storing tools. But tucked away in the corner was an old trunk I hadn't opened since I moved out of my childhood home. Covered in dust and a spider web or two, I pulled it forward, wiped it clean, and cracked it open. Inside it scraps of boyhood, my first sketchbook crammed with robots and rocket ships, a faded Christmas card from my third-grade teacher, a Polaroid of me and Dad in the snow, me on his shoulders, both of us grinning, the world still simple. And at the very bottom, a note folded neatly. My handwriting. I recognized it instantly. A letter to future Aiden, written at 15. I'd forgotten I even made it. I unfolded it slowly. Dear me, if you're reading this, I hope you haven't stopped being kind. But I also hope you stopped being silent. You always let people talk over you. You laugh things off even when they hurt. I hope one day you learn how to say that's enough. And I hope you find people who hear you the first time you say it. I blinked hard. It was like the boy I used to be had waited all this time just to tell me you made it. Not rich, not praised, but free. The next morning, I brewed coffee and sat at the kitchen table with the letter from 15-year-old me still in my hands. I read it again, slower this time, letting every word land like a small pebble in a quiet lake. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I started writing letters, not emails, not texts. Real old school letters. But none of them were addressed. None of them were meant to be sent. One to Mom. You raised me to believe kindness was everything. I just didn't realize you meant only when it was convenient for you. One to Clara. You cried on the phone the night you couldn't pay tuition. I dropped everything. You never asked how I managed it. You never even asked how I was doing. One to Luke. Your new iPhone came with a thank you post on Instagram. But not for me, just for the vibes. One to Aunt Janine. You said I saved your life, then kept asking for more. Was that the plan? And finally, one to myself. You are not a bad person for choosing peace. You are not selfish for wanting space. You are not unloving just because you got tired of carrying everyone else's weight. You are allowed to be your own first priority. I folded the letters and tucked them into an empty envelope, labeling it for when I forget. Then I slipped on my boots and went outside. The snow was fresh again, untouched, like the world had pressed restart. I walked the path behind the cabin, through the woods, until I reached a clearing I'd found weeks ago, just a patch of earth and sky where no one ever stood but me. I sat down on a log, looked up through the pines, and whispered, I'm still here, not invisible, not forgotten, not owed, just here. It was a Tuesday in March when someone knocked on the cabin door. I wasn't expecting anyone. My phone was still off, my email untouched. I had told no one, not even Leah, where I was staying. The knock came again. 3 quiet raps, not urgent but certain. I opened the door cautiously, and there she was. Clara, she stood there bundled in a heavy coat, cheeks red from the cold, a backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes searching my face like she wasn't sure if I was real. I figured you might be here, she said, voice hoarse from the wind. Or maybe nerves. I didn't say anything. I just stepped aside. She came in, slowly, like she was afraid to break something. Her eyes scanned the room. Fireplace lit, the worn rug, a plate of toast on the table, the stack of books beside the armchair. You actually did it? She said. You really left. I did. Clara took off her gloves, rubbed her hands together. I tried calling. Writing. I know. A beat passed. Then she pulled something from her coat pocket and held it out. It was the chipped coffee mug. I stared at it. I thought maybe you'd smashed it, she said softly. But then I thought, maybe you kept it. Not because it was a gift, but because it reminded you of everything that went unsaid. She set it gently on the table. Then she looked me in the eye. I'm not here to ask for anything. I'm not even here to apologize again. I just wanted to see you. The real you. Not the version we turned into our safety net. That silence between us, it didn't feel heavy this time. It felt like breathing. I brought something, she said. Unzipping her backpack, she pulled out an envelope. No red ribbon, just plain white paper. My name on it in her handwriting. I took it slowly, opened. Inside was a check for $5,000. I looked at her. It's not everything, she said quickly. But it's a start. It's what I had in my savings. I want to repay you. I don't want my love to be a burden anymore. I didn't know what to say. She added, I don't expect you to come back. I don't expect a hug. I just want you to know I see you now. Not as a wallet. Not as the strong one. Just as Aiden, my brother. My throat tightened. She stood, zipped her coat. I'll go now. But as she reached the door I spoke. Clara. She termed. I said, don't bring money. Just bring the truth. She smiled. Not a guilty smile. A real one. And then she left. 3 days after Clara left the cabin, a new envelope arrived. No postage stamp, just slipped under the door during the night. It was from Leah. Inside was a folded piece of lined notebook paper, torn at the edges like it had been ripped out mid-thought. Her handwriting was rushed, but steady. Aiden. There's a volunteer gala next weekend. Just a small one, nothing fancy. A potluck, actually. They're honoring local donors and mentors. I submitted your name. Not because of the money, though you helped a lot of people, but because of Bryson. He wrote a letter about you. It made the director cry. I thought you should know someone out there looks up to you the way we should have, but didn't. You don't have to come. No pressure. Just if you want to feel seen. We'll be there, no ask, no strings. Just a room full of people who know what you've done, and who don't expect you to do more. Love. Leah. I folded the letter carefully and set it on the mantel next to the chipped mug. That night I stood outside the cabin for a long while. The sky was clear, full of stars. For once I didn't feel the weight of obligation pulling me in every direction. I just felt still, centered. Then I went inside and started baking. Not because I had to bring something, but because I wanted to. The community hall wasn't decorated with chandeliers or velvet tablecloths. Just folding chairs, warm light, and mismatched casseroles on long plastic tables. When I stepped inside, I didn't expect the round of soft applause. Someone whispered, "That's him," and a few heads turned. I felt my chest tighten, but not with panic, with something softer. Something that might have been peace. Lee spotted me first. She didn't rush over. She simply waved and smiled like she'd been waiting without expecting. Bresson was there, wearing a button-down shirt 2 sizes too big. His eyes lit up. "You came," he said. "Would have been rude not to," I replied. He laughed. "They're going to read my letter." I blinked. "They are," he nodded. "I told them I didn't want to read it myself, but it's about you. I thought maybe, I don't know, you should hear it." I stood near the back as the event began. There was no stage, just a woman with a microphone standing between tables, reading from a paper. "This next letter," she said, "was written by one of our mentees. He wanted us to share it anonymously, but I've been granted permission to tell you it's about someone in this room." A hush fell. I didn't know grown-ups could be kind without wanting something. I didn't know they could show up without money attached. The man I'm writing about never talked down to me. He taught me to code, but more than that, he taught me that I mattered. Even if I didn't always say the right thing, or have the nicest shoes or the best grades. I think he saved me from disappearing. He didn't even know he was doing it. He just showed up, and that made all the difference. I didn't realize I was crying until the applause came. No one was asking me for anything. No one was demanding more. They were just grateful. And for once, so was I. That night, when I got back to the cabin, I lit the fire. Same chipped mug, same blanket, same quiet, but everything inside me had shifted. Not because someone finally said thank you, but because I no longer needed them to. Sometimes the kindest souls are the ones who stay silent the longest. They carry the weight. They fix the messes. They give and give, until they finally look up and realize no one has ever looked back. This story isn't just about one forgotten Christmas. It's about every quiet person who's been the glue of their family while being treated like an afterthought. If that's you, please hear this. You don't have to earn love by sacrificing your peace. You don't owe anyone your exhaustion. And walking away doesn't make you cruel. It might be the first kind thing you've done for yourself in years. You are not selfish for choosing rest. You are not dramatic for saying enough. And if no one's ever said thank you before, let me say it now, thank you. For all the invisible things you've done, for the birthdays you remembered, for the bills you paid quietly, for showing up when no one else did. Now it's your turn to show up for yourself. If this story made you feel seen, I hope you'll take a second to leave a comment and share your own journey. Let's create a space where quiet strength is recognized, not taken for granted, and if you haven't already, like this video and subscribe to Telling Story with me for more stories that speak to the hearts that carried too much without saying a word. Your story matters. You matter.